to Yuri Fulmer. Yuri and I met a number of years, just a few short years ago, actually, when he was awarded with VIB's 40 Under 40, right? A few short years ago. Yuri's been a supporter of FWE for many years, and to say that he has much to share with us really is an understatement. He will be speaking to us today about franchising and licensing. I know I'd like to tell you just a few things about Yuri. He's the chairman of Fulmer Capital Partners, not corporation, partners. He's been an entrepreneur since he was 19, and he successfully built up $60 million business portfolio before he turned 30. His company was listed twice on the Profit 100 as one of the country's largest and fastest growing private companies. You may know him from his involvement with A&W, Pizza Hut, Mr. Mike's, and now Cafe Artigiano. He started Fulmer Capital Partners in 2010 to enable small and mid-sized companies to meet their full potential. He has many honors. He's been awarded Canada's Top 40 Under 40, Spirit of Vancouver Award, Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal, and the Order of British Columbia, amongst many others. He's also deeply philanthropic and gives back to the community in many ways. He sits on a number of not-for-profit and corporate boards, including Blue Shore Financial, the Fine Foods, eSeries, and United Way Centraid Canada. And so now, I'd like you to join me in welcoming Yuri to the podium.
Thank you, Cheryl. And as soon as I need an online personal ad, you are going to be writing it. Thank you so much. That was very kind. Who knows, that can always be sooner rather than later. So I'm going to whip through in about 20 to 30 minutes today some content on franchising and licensing. And I realize that not every business that you're in today is something that you may even be contemplating franchising about. What I know as an entrepreneur, and I frankly am incapable of having a day job and haven't really had one in a long time, is that the business you're in today is not necessarily the business you're always going to be in. So for you, and even if the business you're in, you say, what, franchising is never going to happen for me, don't just assume that the business you're in today is the only business you're going to spend your life in. You are a room full of entrepreneurs, and I can tell you that there are very few rooms you'll walk into in your life where you have a room full of people who have actually committed to a life as an entrepreneur. So for me as a speaker and as an entrepreneur, this is one of the most rewarding environments I ever get to come and speak to. I've done the duty in the after lunch speaking usually in previous years, so where you're all asleep and nobody really wants to listen. That's the slot Christina usually gives me. So I'm calling this a big promotion this year for me. So grateful to be here, but super grateful to be in a room of people who are not aspiring entrepreneurs, but you all had the courage to actually put your name on something, stick it to your door, and say, I'm in business and I'm in business to be an entrepreneur. So from all of us who do that every day, congratulations for taking that risk. It is a really tough road to hoe, and the fact that you've chosen to do that, I think you will deserve huge kudos for that. And the road gets nothing but bumpier from time to time. For me, it's been the most rewarding journey I've ever been on. When I moved a couple of moves ago, I found that box, the box you've had since high school that has your report cards in it and your bronze medallion and all that kind of stuff. Well, I found that box and I opened it, and it was this book they gave us in grade 11. Sorry, I'm going to move back one so you can see. It was the book of every job you could have, right? So it was doctor, lawyer, vet, accountant, secretary, and what you had to do to get that job, right? So doctor, you've got to go to university, you've got to get this score to get in, you've got to do X years, da-da-da-da. And I'm reading this book, it's about 400 pages long, and I realize I've actually never had a job in this book. And other than my friends who are doctors, lawyers, and accountants, almost everybody I know doesn't have a job in this book. Now, this book was written, as Cheryl was so kind to point out, many years ago when I was in grade 11. But all to say that the world that you can inhabit now is not a world they teach in grade 11. It's only through things like FWE that there's a forum for people to actually have a conversation about entrepreneurship. We're all grateful to things like Dragon's Den for actually telling the world that being an entrepreneur is an okay career, that you can actually do that, and it's not for people who couldn't do anything else. So think of that, and think of the courage that you've put into this, and think of the step forward that you're taking. So congratulations to all of you, and continue the journey. So I'm going to whip through this in pretty quick order to leave some time. That's me. So Christina made the mistake the first time I did this of inviting my mother, and I didn't have a picture of my mother. and I've been hearing about it for years, so she gets one. So that's my family. My stepson on the left, the love of my life, he's 15, and on his birthday, he still wanted to come and spend it with me, notwithstanding his mum and I have gone our separate ways. And that's the other love of my life with his pet duck. So my spare time, a lot of hiking, a lot of time with friends. I did want to point to one picture. It's me and a young fellow named Matthias Marquez. We invested in his business when he was 22 years old. It's a company called Buy a Tab Online. Does digital gift cards for places like the Four Seasons and Whole Foods. When I first met Matthias, he was 22, a fourth-year student at SFU. The company was doing $64,000 in annual revenue, and we invested in it, him and his partner at the time, who was also 22. His partner stole money from us, fled to Australia, which is where all felons go. But Matthias stayed with us. Matthias was just named Entrepreneur of the last year. The company we invested in 6 years ago, doing 64,000, just closed out a year last year at 72 million. It'll do 120 million this year. All due to that kid. He's now 27, like really old, at 27, but a superstar of an entrepreneur and another guy who's never had a day job. So good for him. So all that's me in a nutshell. So today, what we do is invest in small and medium-sized companies. So you see me doing things like slinging lattes up and down the street at Cafe Artigiano. If you haven't been recently, please go more often. I need the money. BBS Pro does chemicals for warewash and cleans and installs draft beer systems across the country. BioTab's the company I just told you about, digital gift cards for major global retailers. And Instant Recycling Perks provides software solutions to the recycling industry. So if you return a tin can and you get money back, we powered some of the back of office stuff that did that. It is the best company I've ever owned. It has one customer and 0 employees. I've been looking my life for a company with 0 customers and 0 employees that can still make me money. That's not possible. This is as close as it gets. And obviously we're still in the A&W business. That is me really a long time ago, back when I had no gray hair. So I've spent a long time doing and being around franchise brands. So unlike you, who stuck your name on the door and had the courage to stand out on your own, I did not. I had the courage to stand behind a bunch of global logos and start my career running my own business for sure, but running my own business as a franchisee. So adopting somebody else's brand, but operating the business and living or failing by how the business did. So that's the collection of businesses I've been involved in over the years, all on the franchisee side on that screen. Except for Mr. Mike's, which I bought in 2005. If you grew up in BC or Alberta, some of you might be too young, but you'd remember Mr. Mike's. You got a wobbly tray, you went to a stinky salad bar where they took the kale off every night, rinsed it and put it back out the next day. You've got a steak that, I'm not kidding, was marinated in mango juice, because mango juice tenderizes meat. So they soaked your steak overnight in mango juice and then rolled this pin thing through it to tenderize it, then threw it on the grill and sold it to you for $5.99. That's what I bought. It was down to 5 locations from 120. We bought it, rebranded it, sort of repositioned it as downscale casual dining, grew it back to 21 locations, and then private equity bought it eventually. Anyway, on the content of franchising, let's get going. So I've got a bunch of phrases that if you're at all interested in franchising your business, I want you to sort of ask these questions to yourself. One is, do you say or believe any of the following? I believe that I'm critical to success of my business. So if I'm not here, customers say something. Customers come in and they ask for me. Customers want to see me when they come to the business. The clients call me. You know, if I didn't come to work on Tuesday, things wouldn't happen. Shipments wouldn't get out the door. Customers wouldn't be satisfied. You know, the employees really look to me personally, for my leadership. It's not about the team. It's not about the business. It's not about brand. It really revolves around me. So my customers come to see me. Is it the little things that I do in the business, those intangible things, the things I can't really describe to you, the things you couldn't put down on paper, the things that don't belong in a manual? It's all those little things that I do in my business that make this business special. My competitors can't do what I do, what I personally do. So it's me that's the difference between me and the competition. We might have the same product, but it's me that makes that big difference to the business. And gosh, I struggle to explain to other people my vision. So I talk about my vision, I see my vision, I know where I'm going. But gosh, I've got these employees who don't really get where we're going, and I try and talk to customers, they don't get where I'm going. I go home for Thanksgiving, my mother wishes I'd been a doctor. You know, all of those kind of things. So if you say any of those things to yourself, it is going to be tough to replicate. Right? Franchising, if you think about it, is about a system, and it's about replicating. And the one thing, you can replicate almost anything in life, right? We've worked out almost how to replicate sheep. The one thing we haven't worked out how to do is replicate you. So unless you have a plan for that, and if you do, do I have investment dollars for you? But short of that, you've got to be franchisable. A business has to have a system that can be easily documented. So documented doesn't mean you can tell somebody about it, and if they sit with you personally for long enough, they'll get it. It means it has to be able to be written down. So documented, written down, recorded, so that somebody can look at it, absent you personally being there for them to look at it. Somebody can look at it and replicate it. And to be replicatable, it's not replicatable by somebody who has your skill, knowledge, experience, replicatable by somebody who does not have your skill, knowledge, and experience. So it's somebody who hasn't been there before, hasn't done what you've done, hasn't seen what you've seen, and doesn't know what you know. So if it can't be read and understood by somebody like that, it is going to be tough. You've got to have a value that outweighs the fee you're collecting. So franchising is a business. We are going to sell you for some amount of money in some different way, and there's a whole different bunch of different payment mechanisms for franchising. But we are going to sell you something in return for a fee in return. And like any financial transaction, if I am charging you a fee, if you don't feel you're getting value for the fee you're paying me, you may do it for a little while, you may do it for a little while longer, but at some point you're going to stop doing it, right? You're going to say, I'm not getting value for what I'm paying for. So in franchising, it's the same. And it's an interesting transition. A good idea just isn't quite enough. You have to have something tangible that delivers to somebody a value that they can earn money from that is greater, and they're going to earn more money by having yours than they would by having theirs. So in a really simple example, if I decided to get into Yuri's hamburgers tomorrow and put up a great sign down the street and said, Yuri's hamburgers are the best, they're made from kangaroos raised on the farm Yuri was raised on in Australia. We don't call them the Whopper, we call them the Hopper because they're raised from kangaroo. If I did that, it's going to be wildly unsuccessful, right? I am not going to have the ability to do that on my own that I would be able to do by franchising a system, whether it's A&W, McDonald's, or whatever else it would be. So in that situation, notwithstanding I send my dear friends at A&W a big pile of money every year for the right to operate the restaurants we operate across Western Canada, notwithstanding I send them that big pile of money, I am getting in return something greater than the fee that I'm sending. So we've got good economic value. You've got to have a clear and easily explained strategy, value proposition, market position, and customer segmentation. The key to this is you've got to have all of those things, and you've got to have them in a way that somebody else gives you credit for it. So having it in your head, or having it so that when you sit around the table at dinner after a bottle of wine, you've convinced yourself you have, might not be quite enough. It's something that you could articulate in a way that somebody would look to you and say, that's great, I get it, I get where this business belongs, I get who the customer is, I get why the customer would buy it, and lastly and most importantly, I am going to pay you for the right to do it for myself. So it's not just, does it all work? Does it work? And I am prepared to pay you to do it. It's also got to be sufficiently profitable for everybody to make money. And good franchisors would tell you that the thing that they are most concerned about in life is, do their franchisees make money? Because profitable franchisees equal happy franchisees, equal non-complaining franchisees, and non-suing franchisees. Franchisees not making money equal people who complain, and they complain all the time. Fair enough, right? Your livelihood's on the line. As all of you, to some greater or lesser extent, have put your lives on the line for your business. You've put your family's success. You've put your financial success. In a lot of cases, and my house was on the line for the business for 15 consecutive years. It's not until some of those weights are lifted off you that you realize that the burden that caused your life. If you've lain in bed at night doing the math on the ceiling, saying, am I going to make payroll this Thursday? Right, carry the two. If they make the bank deposit by 3 o'clock tomorrow, then there'll be enough money in the account. So we've all done that. Or what if I cash advance my credit card and put money into the business so that we make it? So if you've lived there, you know what that's like. And can you imagine doing that and you're sending somebody else some money for the privilege of running a business that causes you to be up at night, doing math on the ceiling, worried if you're going to make payroll, and maxing your Visa card to put money into the business. Meanwhile, you're sending somebody else money for the privilege of operating that business. Don't work. Right? Everybody has to make money in this equation. So a franchise is simply this: a system where the franchisor delivers value that is at least equivalent to the fee that the franchisee pays. An interesting transition as a franchisor. So if your business is franchisable and you decide I'm going to go out there and find myself a group of franchisees or people who want to buy or license my business and are going to operate it, an interesting transition happens. They become your customers. So the person who buys the product, and I'll use A&W as an example, the person buying a teen burger at the counter becomes the franchisee's customer. And as the franchisor, as your business that you're licensing to somebody else or franchising to somebody else, that franchisee becomes your customer. And then the person at the buying end of the product sort of becomes the consumer. And you're trusting that franchisee with the responsibility to look after the consumer. So if in your business you think to yourself, gosh, unless I have a relationship or people I can control, and by control I mean people who I can hire or fire, and if they're not doing a good job, I can get rid of them tomorrow, have the relationship with the consumer. If you can't get your head around giving up that sense of trust or an understanding that they could in fact do it, this is going to be a tough environment. So the other thing is, think of the relationship. If you have a product or service you sell direct to consumer, think of the relationship you have with the customer. Like phrases, it's cliched, but the customer's always right. If the customer phones you and complains, you bend over backwards to help them out, do what they need to do, fix the problem, make them feel better about themselves. That is what you're going to be doing with franchisees. And they are going to be calling you. And just as your customers today, if you provide them a product or service that doesn't live up to their expectation, they bring it back to you, and some bring it back very politely and kindly. Some bring it back and throw it at you. Some don't even bother, and they get on social media with their Twitter followers and tweet about how terrible you are and never give you the opportunity to talk about it. And some, even though the product and service was fine, decide they're in a mean, miserable mood and decide you're going to bear that. And they're going to tweet about how terrible you are, notwithstanding you may not have done anything wrong. That is what your franchisees are now going to do to you. So they're going to call you every time you do something that they don't like. They're going to call you any time that they're not happy. They're going to call you and demand that you rectify this or remedy this. So the person you are dealing with, or the kind of person and business you're dealing with, changes dramatically. And I speak from experience of this. So I was a franchisee, still am a franchisee for many years, and have dabbled in the other side, being a franchisor or being a pure entrepreneur. But the kind of person who lives in franchising every day, who says, I'm not going to put my name on the door, I'm going to go out and license somebody else's name. Whilst they're an entrepreneur, and this is going to sound bad, they're kind of a almost entrepreneur. So like the Diet Coke of entrepreneur, right? So there's somebody who didn't quite have as much courage as the people in this room. They didn't quite want to stick their neck out and come up with something brand new and different or innovative or find a new market for a product. They wanted to go and operate something else. Nothing wrong with this. This isn't criticism. It's just positioning exactly the type of person who says, I don't quite have the courage. I don't quite believe in my own sense of innovation. I don't quite believe in my own sense of business development. So what I'm going to do is license somebody else's system. So they think they're entrepreneurs. They have a lot of the same stress of doing the math on the ceiling and maxing their Visa cards and doing all of that kind of thing. But they have those stresses without necessarily the final control, because the franchisor has the final control. That's the kind of person that's phoning you at 10 o'clock at night or sending you emails after they've had a bottle of wine in the evening. And when they're doing that math on the ceiling, that's who's calling you to talk about it. So, to be happy as a franchisor, to be really happy, you need to happily watch others do a poor job executing the business you founded, own, and run. Getting a franchisee out of your business in Canada is the next best thing to impossible. Legislation is skewed franchisee side, and even if the franchisee is wrong, this is what it sounds like in court. I'm a poor little business person who spent many sleepless nights with my house on the line doing math on the ceiling and maxing my Visa card to put it into the business. Meanwhile, multinational, mega-national, huge corporation run by big, mean people who should have known better took my money and allowed me to do this and didn't educate me properly about it, didn't get me ready properly for it, and didn't provide me enough help. That's the story. And in that story, the franchisor loses every time, and the franchisee wins every time. When it actually gets to court, franchisors lose 97% of the time in Canada. 97% of the time. The only time they win is when they can prove somebody lied, cheated, or stole in some big catastrophic way. So absent that, if you sign up a franchisee and they start sending you checks, you own them for life. You ain't getting rid of them, no matter how poorly they do at it. You need to enjoy being told why you need to change your vision, your products, your services, your pricing, your target market, your advertising, virtually everything else about your business. Unless they are making buckets of money, you've got it wrong. You don't know what you're doing, and gosh darn, they could do it better. The only challenge is they don't have necessarily another idea. So again, back to that entrepreneur light or diet entrepreneur, they have enough knowledge to know what's happening isn't working, not necessarily enough knowledge to provide a positive alternative. So you need to enjoy working with people who don't share your vision and just, darn it, don't care as much as you do. So why would you do it then? It's a really easy way to expand with no money, right? In the franchising world, the franchisee puts up the capital for the business. Whatever that capital looks like, whether they have to build a building, put equipment in, pay an upfront fee, buy a territory, whatever that looks like, you're doing it, you're getting some money from it, you're not putting up any capital to do it. That's a nice thing. The belief that owners care more than paid managers, right? So you believe that somebody who owns their business is going to do way better for you than somebody who you just pay by the hour, by the month, by the year, and provide a bonus to. So you fundamentally believe an owner is a better person to run your business or a part of your business than a paid manager is. So my experience with this would be the best franchisees are better than the best managers. Just for that reason. Because their house is on the line, their family's income's on the line, their names are sort of on the door, they have pride in their own business. So the best owner is better than the best manager. The other end of the scale is the worst owner is way worse than the worst manager. And the worst manager has the benefit you can fire him. Worst franchisee doesn't. But the worst manager, even on their worst day, if you put enough pressure on them, they're either going to perform, they're going to quit, or you're going to move them out the door. You can go to the worst franchisee in the system and they will tell you to get the blankety blank out of their whatever it is that you've licensed to them. They tell you to sue them, they can stop paying you, and there's very little you can do about most of those things. So best end, worst end, there's an overlap. Gosh darn, royalties are nice. So you get to have somebody else do a lot of hard work, and every month you get to open an envelope and there's a check in it. And you didn't necessarily do very much for that check. And man, is that a good feeling. Rebates. So most franchisors provides access to some products or services for which they receive a rebate on the site. So for example, A&W, I buy French fries. For the French fries I buy, A&W gets some amount of money somehow for doing, again, very little. So they get to open a check at the end of the month, and gosh darn, that feels nice. And done well, I'm sure you folks got into business to do the fun stuff, right? It's the branding, it's the brand development, it's the vision, it's the strategy, it's the product strategy, it's the client philosophy. You got into business to do that fun stuff. You didn't get into business to make bank deposits every day, or to write a staff schedule, or to deal with nitty-gritty entry-level human resource problems every day. That's not the fun stuff. That's the fun stuff. And what franchising can do is allow you to work on the fun stuff and somebody else to work on the nitty-gritty, day-to-day operational responsibility. And I'm the kind of person who, when my staff come to tell me the photocopy is not working, I blank out and there's a photocopier in the building somewhere, I just can't get to that. I'm the sort of person that likes to live here and live in the strategic place. And so for me, having people out there who want to and willingly sign up to do the nitty-gritty day-to-day stuff, I find hugely rewarding. There's no speech that doesn't end with a top 10 list that's a little bit hokey and kind of gets a couple of groans halfway through. So I've got one of those too. Top 10 reasons. It's the franchisor-franchisee relationships like a marriage. It lasts for 10 years, sometimes 20. Canadian average is 6.7 right now. Mine was not 6.7. It costs money to consummate. You're now obliged to do what you're told. This is gender neutral. They send people to make sure you're doing exactly what you're told. You lose your individual identity and you become we. You change your name and you take on theirs. You argue with the other party quite regularly. It's not always fun. You always lose the argument as a franchisee, always. After a while, you start to look for something new to do because what you're doing now isn't quite as sexy as it was when you signed up for it. And if you want out, you lose your shirt. And that applies to both sides of it as well. So I just wanted to share two things in wrapping up. One, so that's a picture of the plane I flew out of Bhutan on about a year ago. So we were flying out of Bhutan, a friend and I who were hiking, a friend who was in the first slide, and we hit a hailstorm. We didn't actually know what we'd hit. All we knew was the plane started bouncing through about 200 feet. All of the overheads popped open, luggage was flying everywhere. A third of the plane was screaming, and I mean that blood-curdling scream you hear when people are at the end. We could look out the window and I could see hailstones the size of baseballs bouncing off the wing. And the plane started to go down, right? So the trajectory changed dramatically. And so I put earphones in my ears and I was listening to music and just cranked the music and thought, I have no control over what happens. I'm going to sit here and listen to music and it'll be what it'll be. So the pilots landed us at an Air Force base in rural India. And we were sitting on the plane, and they came on and said, sorry, we've had a technical malfunction. We will be deplaning you momentarily. And so we're looking out the window, and I could see the wing looked pockmarked, right? Like big pockmarks in the wing. And I could see every member of the Indian Air Force was gathered on this tarmac with their iPhone out, taking a picture of our plane. And I thought, like, this is odd, right? Like, seriously? So eventually they pull up the thing and we walk off and we walk around the front of the plane. And that's what we see. So to give you a sense, all of the navigational equipment in a commercial aircraft is in that nose cone. Both of those windscreens are completely smashed, right? So that you could not see out of those windscreens. The leading edge of both wings is completely pockmarked. There's a panel missing from the tail, completely fallen off the tail. I texted that picture to a commercial pilot who says, "Did you get off that plane?" And I said, "Actually, I did." He said, "You shouldn't have. There's no way two pilots should have put that plane on the ground. Like, you should be dead." So that's one of those moments where you realize there's absolutely nothing that I can do in my business that is life-changing, right? There are real life-changing moments in life, and then there's making hamburgers and French fries and all of those things that somehow are really way less important. So that, for me, was some perspective. The other one that I always share, and if Judy Brooks was in the room, she'd be glaring at me because she cut me off when I said this once before and turned my microphone off. But I have a firm no asshole rule, right? And this applies to business. And when you are new in business or early stage in business, it is really easy to get caught up in the world of, I need to be nice to everybody and work with everybody and placate everybody and build bridges with everybody, and I don't want to alienate anybody. It's really easy to do that. You know what? I decided about 5 years ago to get assholes out of my life. Right? I don't lease property from them. I don't do business with them. I don't let them teach my children. I don't employ them. I don't work with them. I don't consider them friends. Get assholes out of your life. For me, if there was one thing that I changed in my business life, it was to say, if you're an asshole, and this is my judgment of asshole, right? So I completely appreciate, the one thing when you think somebody else is an asshole, the high likelihood is they think you're one too. So, take that for what it is. But the real big piece for me was to say, you do not have to build bridges with everybody. You do not have to make everybody happy. You do not have to placate everyone. And this is coming from a guy with a bit of an ego. I would tell you that most women leaders I encounter are more inclined to build bridges and placate and make everybody happy. If there's one thing I would give to you is you do not need to try if the person on the other side does not have the values that you have. And you need to sort of say to yourself, is the compromise of my values worth the advantage that I'm going to get in this business today? And do that math and say to yourself, it's never a one-time thing. If I compromise my values today for a business outcome, that never happens once. Next time you'll ask yourself the same question and you'll do the math again, and 10 years from now you'll compromise every value you have for a return. So if I can give you any advice today, it would be just to say to yourself, is the person I'm dealing with on the other side, they just don't get it, and that's fine, I'm going to sit here and try and help them get it? Or is this person on the other side not share my values, they're an asshole, and I don't belong here, and I need to get out of here? So that's it, that's me.